All right, folks, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Sherwood City Council, November 19th, 2024. Work session, call us into a session at 5:30 p.m. We've got 3 items tonight. We're gonna review our solid waste and recycling collection rates again. We're gonna talk about city council goals. And then to be clear, that will be an update on our goals from last year. We'll be going into goal setting at the beginning of the year. And we're going to talk about recreational immunity. So first on the list is solid waste. Rick.
Thank you. We brought Chris back to do a little presentation because there were some questions from our about a month ago we met in work session. And then we had Metro out on tipping fees. And I just want to make sure any questions are answered that you might have is to kind of walk back through where we had a month ago before you're asked to approve a rate increase. So Chris.
I'm assuming that Metro answered your questions to your full satisfaction.
They answered questions.
Your mind is the chaperone tonight.
I am, well, I am. Yeah, she's actually not feeling too well. She's got a cold, so I left her at home, which is a good thing. Like Craig was saying, this was a continuation of where we spoke about garbage last time. And I know there was a lot of questions regarding Metro, and like I was, asking them. Hopefully you got the questions answered to your satisfaction. Although I still think there's a lot of questions regarding what's going to happen in the future still left to be answered. This right here, if you recall the adjustments, this is the adjusted 2023 results that were submitted by Pride. And to refresh what we're seeing or what I'm seeing at Pride, there's a significant cost increases specifically related to garbage disposal, to labor, and also to trucks and equipment. And if you recall, they got a significant amount of trucks that were, they got 3.5, 4 years worth of trucks within 18 months. And so that does have a significant impact on their financials because typically the haulers will spread that out over a period of time. And not only did they get them all once, but what we're seeing is the cost of trucks are significantly increased over the last 4 years. And so not only hard to come by, they take a long time to get there and they're even more expensive. And so that was a significant portion of why the adjusted results were lower than what we expected.
Quick question on that.
Yes.
I think I asked it last time. I apologize. I forget. What's their accounting policy for how they depreciate?
Oh, they
capitalize over time.
And this is across the Portland metropolitan region, 7 years for trucks. And typically, most of the garbage companies will put it in order. They'll run the thing 5 to 6 to 7 years frontline, and then they'll relegate that frontline truck to secondary, and they'll run that for a couple more years until it gets to a point where the cost to maintain it exceed the cost of a new truck. And then they usually wholesale that out.
So they're depreciating it over 7 years.
7 years.
So these costs are only that 1/7 basically.
1/7, correct. And it should be flat over a period of time. And I was happy to see that, they got a lot all once as opposed to, pushing them out over a period of time.
So that means we're gonna have to replace them all 7
In
years.
7 years, 7 to 10 years, correct.
So they're staging them, right?
Well, they're staging them. They still are. They're still, and Kristen can probably answer that a little bit more succinctly. But I'm assuming that their replacement policy hasn't changed, even though the lag time is a lot slower from equipment. I know that most of the haulers are still putting in the orders because the trucks are still on the road every day and they still have to be replaced on a regular basis. So
Yeah,
I would hope, go ahead.
Sorry, if I could just add to that, we generally buy between 4 and 5 trucks a year on our regular replacement schedule. And so the lag that Chris is talking about, we got kind of 2 years of trucks all around the same time because there was a delay because of everything the economy has been going through the last few years. So even though we've been seeing those delays, we continued to place our normal 4 to 5 truck orders each year, knowing that if we don't order them, we won't be in line to then receive them later than they're probably promised to us, but it's kind of a cycle that we have to stay on regardless of when we receive them so as not to have big spikes in those depreciation expenses.
Okay, and then the other question I had on the cost of the trucks, is this because the base model has gone up in cost or, are we getting windshield wipers on the headlight?
Well,
You know what I mean?
yeah, the costs have, it's crazy because the costs have significantly increased, especially after the last 4 years, significantly increased in cost. A colleague of mine was telling me that the manufacturers have figured out they reduce the amount that they're manufacturing to 50%, they double the margin on it. So the cost of the trucks have significantly increased, plus the lag time, and plus with inflation and everything
But it
else.
also seemed like then a competitor would start making.
You would
more
hope,
trucks.
you would hope that, and that's what we're hoping, but we're not really seeing that right now.
Okay,
And how? Those 4 to 5 trucks, obviously Pride has several more franchises than just Sherwood. So
Correct.
how's that allocated across the franchise?
Truck hours. So what they do is they record how many hours a year, these trucks run. And then so, for example, and I included that, I think in the last slide I presented, last time, I don't have it in this slide. But there's an allocation percentage. So if you take 1/7 of that truck and let's say 40% of that truck time is spent in Sherwood, then 40% of that 1/7 gets allocated to to Sherwood or to Tigard or to Washington County or the other jurisdictions that they serve.
I think I saw that there are some electronic trucks too. Is that the plan moving forward to move towards?
Kristen, you want to answer that one?
Sure. So we do have on order 2 electric vehicles for fully electric automated garbage trucks that would pick up residential carts. They're supposed to arrive in the first quarter of 2025, so that is not part of this report. We did apply, they are more expensive than the natural gas trucks we buy. And we did apply for some PGE grant funding to help with those costs, but unfortunately we did not receive that grant funding. So because of the significantly higher expense, while we understand our communities and we would like to move in that direction to help with the air in the communities that we service, we don't think the communities currently can bear 4 to 5 electric trucks on an annual basis because of the higher cost. So that's why we started a little bit smaller, and hopefully the price of those will come down or at least become more comparable to the CNG vehicles that we buy currently.
Isn't there a corresponding drop in your operating costs though? Because it's electricity, not diesel.
Right. So most of our fleet now is natural gas rather than diesel. So it's not quite as much of a savings as it would be if we had been running diesel. But the trucks are supposed to have lower maintenance costs as well. So it's one of those things that there should be some offsetting operational costs, but we won't really know what that looks like until we get them in and are operating them. We were able to demo one of those trucks for a week during the summer and ran it on some of our, more difficult routes and hills and things like that. And 2 of our longest tenured drivers drove them and said that a lot of the safety features and the automated features on the truck, they feel that those trucks are as efficient as they are as drivers who have, been driving garbage trucks for 30 years. And so in theory, we can increase efficiency for some of our slower drivers as we get more of these trucks, and just continue to improve on a lot of those other operational expenses.
Aren't the battery trucks smaller capacity?
From a payload, from a weight perspective,
Yeah,
no, these ones are not.
okay, good.
Yeah, the reason we've delayed doing these EVs until now is because we didn't feel like what was on the market, both from a battery life perspective, being able to run a full day's route, as well as the payload issues, the technology was not there. With this truck or these 2 trucks that we've ordered, this style of truck, the technology really is there. We ran them full days routes on hills and rural areas, and they still had 40% battery life left. We were able to put, we're able to put plenty of weight on them. We'll just say that.
yeah, and I would only be interested, I'm with you. Sometimes electric vehicles are not the right option for something, but it's usually like if we can make a smaller form factor and it can fit in, Old Town, or it can, do business pickups differently or whatever, then there might be an opportunity for that. So if it makes sense, let's be creative about that.
How much of the rate increase is from the trucks
Uh,
that you're proposing?
I'd have to go back and get you that specific number. I don't have it off the top of my head.
It'd be, we don't need it, but tonight, but it'd be useful to just understand that, because I know a lot of the rate increase is coming from the metro increasing fees upon us. Correct. Which we have zero control over. We're gonna have to do some PR with our community to make sure where this is coming from, so I think it's important.
Okay. I can get that for you. So if you recall, last year when we met, I want to say in May or June. And the council approved a rate increase in September, which was great considering that the increase in disposal cost, I believe off the top of my head, were 16 or almost $17 per ton, which had a significant impact on the rates and on the profitability. And these were the rate adjustments that were proposed and that went into place on September 1st. And they do have they are rippling through for 2024 on the projected costs. So costs from 2023 were projected to 2025. So keep in mind, we've got 2023, we've got 2024 this year, and we're projecting for 2025. So we've got 18 months to 2 years worth of costs that we're putting into into the proposed rate schedule. And so the driver increases, the wages, almost 6%. The truck repair increased by a little bit, 2.5%. And that's just primarily from inflation. And interestingly enough, when I was working with Eric on this, the 2.5% is just inflationary, but he did estimate that the overall cost would decrease maintenance wise because of the new trucks. Organic waste is increasing by 8.5%. And
What's driving that?
Disposal, processing cost, transportation, because it has to be, they collect it here and then they take it to another distant processing facility. And then truck depreciation increased by 13%. And this is the amount that we were talking about just for that increase. And these are the average costs of the trucks that were purchased. So back to Metro, and this is the impact on disposal costs since 2020. And you can see that it's had a significant amount. And then here's the details of the increased collection costs that you were asking about as far as on collection and disposal costs. And
Go back to that last slide.
Yeah.
Just PSA for our community who's watching this. This is an important slide. These are the costs that Metro is incurring on us. There's tipping fees and other things buried in there. And this is the main reason our rates have been going up so much over the last 5 years? 5 years now. And we don't, under state law and under franchise agreements, we don't have a lot of control over it.
Correct. What's interesting is prior to the double-digit increases from Metro, typically you'd set the rates and they'd run for 2 to 3 years, and then there'd be another adjustment. So the last 5 years, I've been here every year, and this has been the primary driver of your increases.
Yeah, and that's not to say we haven't been talking to Metro, lobbying Metro, trying to get them to think differently about how they structure their costs. We have been spending a lot of energy doing that, but it hasn't been successful.
Lake Oswego wants to take your lead and talk to some people from Metro here within the next couple weeks. So they got the same issue. They're a little irritated with.
Had a meeting as well.
Beaverton. Yeah. So I think it's everybody who has to look at these rates or has to see me, wants to talk to Metro also. So these are the details of the increased cost, or the percentage that makes up that amount. So the truck and equipment, of that $2.22 increase, 14% of that is attributed to the truck and equipment cost. And what I mean by the $2.22, that's independent of the Metro tipping fee. These are the costs that are being incurred by Pride to provide the collection services.
Okay.
So in 1 year, our operating margins are rising 36%?
No, the operating margin, if you recall, back here was 4%. So it's making up it's making up the additional, the difference between the 4% and the 10%, which is typically when we recalibrate the rates, we calibrate them for a 10% margin. So that 36% is the 6% of the difference between 10% and 4%. And then it's also the increased cost. So it's a combination of those two items. And then on your disposal cost, the increased cost for your disposal, or this is the impact of your disposal cost. This is what you're paying for when you look at your Metro tipping fee, or that's $7.31. What does that comprise? What is that comprised of? And this is assuming a 35-gallon cart.
I guess I'm not aware of that terminology. Margin's always meant to be the profit after expenses is the margin you're operating. And so I guess I'm just a little confused about it.
You can call it profit margin, operating margin. You can apply, I apply a ratio to the expenses and then subtract it out to generate.
But that's the 36% is to get them to the 10% that they're allowed under the law.
Correct.
Under our code, we have a rate of return that we're expected to meet with Pride. And the number this year was below the threshold between that 8 and 12%. And so because of that, it requires an additional study, which is what Chris Bell has done now. And then the projection is supposed to get us to that 10%. That's what our code says. And so he has projected it out that it needs to be at this percentage to get us to 10% for Pride.
Okay.
And then the one thing too, that there's two things. Number one, the margin's not guaranteed. You know, a lot of people say you're guaranteed a rate of return, and quite clearly you can see they came in at 4%. So if they're below the margin, the ordinance doesn't allow or doesn't provide a makeup for that lost amount. You know,
Just the next
It's just
year.
yeah, it's that's the risk they have of doing, you know, of providing the service.
When we say margin, are we talking about like revenue minus cost of goods sold, or are we talking EBITDA?
Just no, not well, EBITDA depreciation's included there, but we don't include amortization. So,
Okay.
and we don't include taxes, except we don't include income taxes.
So I'm thinking about it in terms of CapEx. So
Yeah,
like typically in a for-profit company, your margin after your cost of goods sold is what you use for investment.
mhm.
But in this case,
Yeah,
taking CapEx out,
yeah, the way in the garbage industry, it's revenue minus cost of goods sold. Cost of goods sold is disposal, recycling, and franchise fee, and then you have your operational costs. That includes the truck, labor, administrative costs, and then that flows down to whatever that amount is. But we don't calculate income taxes. That's paid. So back to this franchise income right here, this $206,000. Pride pays an income tax on that. So it will, depending on the way their corporation's set up, they're paying income tax on that $206,000. And that income tax is not included in the calculation. That's what they do.
so all the EBITDA's in there except the tax.
Except the tax.
Okay.
Except the tax. That's back, you know, back to the depreciation. That's that equipment at 1/7. So for 2025, there's two components to the rate increase. There is the collection cost, which is the $2.22, and that's the cost that's being incurred by Pride to provide the collection services. And then there's the disposal, the increase in disposal cost. Or that back to the I think we've got in there. We're estimating, excuse me, 165 for the upcoming year, assuming that there's gonna be an increase to some degree.
65 gallon or 60? My Pride bill says 60, just curious.
I'm assuming it's a 60, you know, some manufacturers make 64, some make 65.
So somewhere in the 60s.
Yeah, it's somewhere between 64 and 65, depending on the car manufacturer. So these are the proposed collection rates for 2025 that go into effect on January 1st.
How many 6-yard carts do we have out there?
Oh, 6-yard weekly?
Yeah, how many customers?
I can get you that.
I'm just,
The most popular ones, the 3 and 4s.
for next year, it'd be helpful to kind of understand that distribution of.
Oh, yeah,
where
I
all
can-
those customers are.
I can give you all of that. In fact, I can give you all that after. Send you all that stuff. That's all included in what Pride sends every year.
Here's why the collection, I'm sure I've
Yeah.
asked this prior years, but the collection increase for the
Why they're all the same?
yards are different, but then we keep it the same for, yeah.
Oh, the collection cost is actually allocated on the yard. So, for example, the collection cost, I believe, I want to say was 91 cents a yard. And so if you look at the 2 yard and divide it by, you gotta take 2, multiply by 4.33 to get the number of yards collected per month, and then divide it by the $7.90.
Gotcha.
That's how,
Okay.
yeah, so I'm allocating that based on a collected yard.
Okay.
And then the reason on the carts that the collection is the same is because it costs the same to drive down the street and pick up, the same labor costs, same truck costs, same general costs for a 20-gallon versus a 32-gallon versus a 60-gallon. That doesn't change regardless of the size of the cart. So sometimes people think, well, a 60-gallon cart should cost twice as much as a 30-gallon cart. But the reality is that most of those base costs are the same. It's just the difference in the amount of garbage that's in the cart that really makes the difference.
Thanks, Kristen.
A while back, I did try to calculate what that fractional amount was, taking up the space in the truck.
Not worth it.
No, it wasn't.
That's what Chris does when he can't sleep on a Thursday.
I did it because a colleague of ours named Dean Camper asked me to do that for him, and I said, it's not even worth.
I mean, it sounds like something Tim would ask you to do.
Well, he'd probably done it too, yeah, hey, so.
Just one more comment on that slide.
Oh, back on this one?
Oh, yeah, as you're seeing, it's like around a 10% increase for everything. And so that's what had me kind of look into this further, because that seems crazy if we're going to be given a 10% increase every year. I mean, rates are going to double in 7 years.
Do that.
Right. And so it just so happens that it is 10% to match the target of 10%. In a typical year, if we were to be within that 8 to 12%, it would be indexed to the CPI for our region, which today it's closer to 2%.
2.6.
So unfortunately, this is what it is to catch up. Hopefully things work out better.
If, let's just assume that the tipping fee increases, let's say CPI next year, and everything else is good, then the way your ordinance reads, it would just be an adjustment of the CPI. They submit the report, Craig would look at it and say, hey, we're done, Chris, I don't need to bother you anymore. Yeah. And we go through it.
Although I can't remember in any years recently where it's only been the CPI.
Well, right.
I don't think since I've been on council.
It was like 2015 or 16.
Yeah, there was
1 year.
a couple of years that I recall.
So our code does not guarantee them 10% increase every year. It just happens that is what it is around this year.
The other thing I would just add is, while we're talking about this at the end of 2024, the data that Chris is working off of is for the report for the calendar year 2023 that we turned in March 15th of 2024. So it's a very kind of delayed reaction. So, our costs increased quite a bit in 2023 related to inflation. And so it feels like, well, CPI is around 2.5% right now. So why are we seeing this? But these costs are based off of 2023 numbers, not 2024 numbers. And yes, Chris has done some projections as well for what future costs might be, but that's part of what is impacting this as well.
So just, most of you know this, but for people listening, the mayors in the region are not happy with Metro with all the increases that we're seeing. So we're having a lot of conversations with them. If you tuned into our last meeting, part of the reason the tipping fees are going up so much is they have a $20 million chargeback to general services for their waste fund, which is severely impacting our rates, which, to say that in layman's term, the waste business at Metro is subsidizing losses in other business like their the expo center, and those types of things, which I fundamentally disagree with their accounting methodologies around that, but we're having those conversations with Metro. They did agree to expand the scope and the people that sit on their RWAC, their Regional Waste Advisory Committee. So we're gonna have some mayors sitting on that committee now. They're gonna be reviewing rates and what that looks like. So, but my humble opinion is their costs are out of control over there. So.
Yeah, they've hired a lot of people to. I had a colleague who I'll talk to you offline about it.
I also just wanted to let you all know that I found out at the end of last week that I've also been selected to serve on that Metro RWAC moving forward under the new configuration.
That's great.
It'll be awesome. We'll see if they, if it goes beyond just transparency and actually into collaboration. Yeah, so.
So the last one is the medical collection rates, and I briefly touched on this when we met last time. The company that's doing most of the medical waste collection is Trilogy. And they used to be formerly owned by Waste Management, they spun them off. And so these are the proposed collection rates. There's one change that's been kind of rippling through the region, and that is with the closure of Covanta on December 31st. A lot of the medical waste in the region was being incinerated in Marion County at the waste energy facility. That's no longer going to happen. And so a lot of this waste is going to be shipped to other places until I believe that Trilogy is in the process right now of completing the installation of 2 autoclaves in Clackamas, which they will utilize those to dispose of the medical waste. However, anything that needs to be incinerated right now has to be sent to the state. And that's why that hemopathology box unit is so significantly higher, because you got to transport it out.
And the closest incinerator now that Covanta in Oregon is closing is in Texas. So it's a significantly further distance for them. And there's a state law in Oregon says that certain types of medical waste can't be autoclaved and sent to the landfill. It has to be incinerated, but we no longer have an incinerator in the state. So this is a statewide issue, not just a Sherwood issue.
When's it closing?
Due to air quality concerns and compliance.
No, well, the biggest thing is they're not making any money. Covanta's not, and they had a tax credit that sunset, and the legislature didn't choose to renew that. And so that's a significant impact of their bottom line. So they just said, we're done. They've closed up their incinerator in Long Beach, closing it up here in Marion County, and they'll probably end up closing the one in Spokane here shortly too.
How much of our rate increases due to this?
Not a significant amount. Jeff did submit, he wanted some other stuff, and I asked Eric, I said, before we act on what Jeff wants, Jeff's from Trilogy, I said, I'd like to see some further information.
And just to clarify, we subcontract out our medical waste collection to Trilogy. So it's under the franchise. We're responsible for the reporting and the franchise fees for all of that. But this particular component we subcontract out. And the only, the general rate increases for the rate of return on the medical waste is in this slide. Nothing about the medical waste is being subsidized by any of the other services. It stands alone.
Okay.
And so the change from the last meeting to this one specifically is on the chemopathology waste, the kind of second from the bottom on the slide, that is seeing a more significant increase than was originally proposed, because since that meeting, we found out about Covanta and Oregon closing and the need for the much further transportation for that particular kind of waste.
So this is not having a material impact on our residential rates or?
No.
Okay.
The only way, if you have a medical clinic in Sherwood that's providing chemotherapy or has something needs to be incinerated, that they'll see the increase, but most everybody else won't.
Am I also missing something on that? Chemopathology box 47 plus 27.94.
So that was-
Sorry, I plugged in.
Okay.
Yeah, that's.
Which numbers are right?
Oh, yeah, the 115 is right, because I got that.
From the previous.
Yeah, that's what it was supposed to go to. It went up another $40. So it actually went up, it went up $67.94. Yeah, so, hopefully everybody can stay healthy. But that's, yeah.
Any other questions? Keith? Ray? Taylor? No. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for coming again.
Do you want to talk about the agenda for tonight related to this?
Yeah, so we had there was a commercial rate didn't get included in the agenda, so I asked the mayor if he could pull that off. I want to be transparent to the community, so people have time with it posted. So everything except there was a couple commercial rates that didn't get included, so it'll be moved to the December 3rd.
Like give Pride enough time to get their notice
Yeah,
out?
they have to, we talked a little bit before today. They had, I think it was December 8th, and Kristen replied back today after I kind of sent an email what was going on, that they have to have their notices out by the 10th of December. So it needs to happen in the next meeting. Okay. I just want to be transparent with everybody on that, so.
Awesome. Thank you, Barry. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
All right, we will go ahead and move on to item 2, city council goals update. Kristen.
Decided that I'm not skilled enough to run the PowerPoint and speak at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's why we did a little shuffle here.
Yeah.
But Craig, do you wanna?
Yeah, so I know you've been getting some updates throughout the last year or so with the weekly updates, but we really wanted to take time tonight to go through the council goals. We'd like to get feedback. I just don't want to sit here and talk to Kristen and read each line. So we're going to highlight some stuff as we go through, but if there's something you really want to talk about, let's bring it up and we'll talk about it. The department heads are here to answer any questions that they're working on the project. I feel very, very good about where we're at with the goals. There is some stuff that is not started, and you know, if you have questions and you want to talk a little bit more about that, I'm more than happy to discuss that as well. So we'll get her kicked off. So please ask questions. We are going to have some work sessions on the youth advisory to get some more input at the end of December, and we'll talk a little bit about that, Kristen will, as we go through this. So.
Okay, so as everybody is aware, we have 6 pillars that we're going off of. Economic development, infrastructure, livability and workability, public safety, fiscal responsibility, and citizen engagement. So all of our goals are set off of those pillars. So the first one that we wanted to talk about is support new commercial and industrial development in targeted employment areas. And as everybody is aware, an application has been submitted for Sherwood West, and actually Metro Council will be considering expansion during public hearings on November 22nd, or excuse me, 21st and December 5th. So that's our major update for that area. The other item that we wanted to discuss is clarify infrastructure required in financial approach for targeted sites. And this is where staff is working with Business Oregon for low interest funding through the Special Public Works Fund. Did you want to add anything about that for Ice Age Drive?
I do. So the application was submitted in October. We're being told that we got to go through a process. It'd probably be February when we either get denied or approved. We are going to end up having a work session in December because Ice Age Drive project, the property acquisition stuff's moving along. And we have to have a down payment to ODOT of about $18 million, $17 to $18 million, because that project is being ran with the federal funding through ODOT, January 13th. So we're gonna have a work session in December on this, as well as you'll have an agreement from ODOT in with us for that amount of money too, that'll be coming forward. We'll be talking about that in December, probably either the first or the second meeting in December. So kind of a quick turnaround to be able to bid it. They want the money up front to bid it. Otherwise, if we don't do it and you end up pushing it out, it'll be March, you'll run into your summer schedule. So we just need to figure out how we're gonna fund that till completely. So more conversations on that to come.
Any other questions or thoughts on this page?
I love it. The more we can go find other people's money, the better. So.
The next goal is promote strong, diverse economic growth opportunities. And the deliverable we were focusing on is identify target industries that will realistically offer diverse economy in Sherwood. And the question that we had for council here is, back in September on the 17th, council indicated their support for the traded sector target industries. Is this something that you want to have come back via resolution and have more discussion on, or are we happy moving forward?
Thoughts?
I don't think we need a resolution.
Yeah, I don't think
Because
so.
they sort of gave them market.
Yeah, kind of Bruce was leaving and we brought it, and then I'm like, okay, do we want to identify these in a resolution or not? So we just need some clarification on what you guys want to do.
I think that would be symbolic at most. I think we're sensing that there's agreement here that that's our target industries. I'm sure we'll talk about this envisioning in January.
Yep, January 11th.
So, yeah.
Okay,
Good.
great. Any other questions on any of these polls?
And we've been actually winning on some of these things, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Old Town Strategic Plan, everybody's recently received an update on this, and this is well underway, so more to come on that. Next one is still continuing with economic development, and this is encourage balance of Sherwood's tax base. And draft code was reviewed by council through work session, and we're also expecting legislative updates to occur in 2025.
I would just add to this one is one of the things not started is the target metrics for jobs and housing balance. I think those conversations that we had here, now that Eric's on board, and Eric, both of us would have a conversation about that, so.
I feel like that's also contingent upon UGB being brought, like,
It's all ties.
yeah, we won't really know until that gets
Like
accepted.
those longer term goals. Okay.
Yeah, and just as a heads up, the governor dropped a bill today. I think you got it, Craig, I'll get it to you, make sure you send it out because it has some disturbing things in it, like eliminating the requirements for common space and common building for cottage clusters. Allowing larger footprints, basically turning cottage clusters into like row houses or townhomes. So we're gonna have a fun long session, but that's all gonna inform that process as well.
Let's keep changing the rules without giving the previous set, like.
Time to
time to
work.
Well, and then we have the metro, what Metro's trying to do as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of factors we can play into that.
Yep, so moving on to pillar number 2 is infrastructure. And obviously the big one on here is the pedestrian bridge. Construction is well underway, as everybody is aware, and we're expecting substantial completion at the end of 2025. And the first section of the bridge is set to be placed in February of 2025.
Coming up.
I know.
I have a question on that, because every time I drive by and I don't see those power lines and data lines moved yet, I get nervous.
Yeah.
Is PG on track with our timelines?
So we're actually working through that with PG right now. I just actually met with Rich today on that, so.
Maria Pope reached out to me, wants to meet, so if you could get me up to date so I can bend her ear if necessary, that would be great.
I'm happy to, so.
And then the other item here is we're pursuing state and federal grant funding for Cedar Creek Trail. And Metro approved the project, and staff is authorized to apply for funds to design and construct Cedar Creek Trail to Roy Rogers. So this would be from 99 to Roy
And that
Rogers.
would include the undercrossing.
That would not include the undercrossing.
Is that what you just did a presentation yesterday to WCC on that one?
I'm not sure what you just mentioned, but we did RFA funding, yes.
Yeah.
Same one.
Same one.
I think if you look, it's like segment 2 and 3 or something like that, we call it in our.
Mhm.
So.
Okay,
And maybe this is impossible, but the way we funded the last section goes, because it was federalized.
yeah.
There was a lot of requirements put on that really increased the costs. Is there ways we can structure this up front to avoid some of that? I still want a quality trail, but the federal requirements are a little overboard. Cost-wise.
That's how you delivered it and go through ODOT, and that's how
Yeah.
you get a lot of the red tape there.
Yeah, just in terms of how we structure this.
Continue to invest in Sherwood broadband utility as an important infrastructure for Sherwood and beyond. And on this one, it's complete Sherwood broadband fiber to home build out. They've recently completed the 10th neighborhood. Fiber to home project is now 40% complete of single family residential addresses with over 3,000 homes connected to Sherwood broadband
Nice.
or available to them, excuse me. And then continue steps to develop new public works facility. And as everyone is aware, we were awarded the 5 million EPA grant to clean up the Brownsfield project. This will actually come before you at the first meeting in December for approval of that contract for the EPA grant. Undertake important facility and infrastructure master plans. All of these master plans are going to take some time. The only one that's been started is the transportation master plan, and it's a 2-year project. And the contract was awarded in October for this.
I would just point out here, continue your pavement index condition or pavement condition index. Council's goals in the past have been to keep our roads at 80%. With the work we did this summer, we're about 84%. So that goes up and down each year, but that's where it's going to end up this year.
Okay, moving on to public 3.
Do you know, do we receive many calls from public about our roads, conditions or issues?
I hope not. We got some of the nicest roads around.
Shaking his head no.
That's what I was curious.
You know you have left Sherwood.
Because of these rules.
But that's what I just want to make sure that that's being felt in the community as well.
Yeah, so I always joke that I know when I'm leaving Sherwood because the potholes start.
Or the cracks of it.
Question asked to Craig.
No, no.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you.
Rich said
Yeah.
Oh, Rich.
I got an answer.
No, we don't hear too much about that. And, you know, a lot of that is, you know, we have the street maintenance fee that actually pays, we dump about at least $650,000 to $750,000 a year into our roads just for pavement management. So a good portion, all the portion of the street maintenance fee that are on the utility bills into the road somewhere or another, if it's paving, crack sealing, slurry seal, and by being able to do the slurry seals and continue that program, it cuts down on, you can do it every 7 to 8 years. It saves like about 3 times on a road. So. Are you past this one?
No, we're right here. This is right. Age-friendly community initiative, and the project we're working on here is recognition of age-friendly businesses. And Maya has been working with the chamber, Farah's here tonight, to develop a workbook, a how-to workbook and informational brochure to give out to businesses. Work to improve interconnectivity and walkability of the trail system. The feeder trail from Sunset to Cedar Creek Trail was just complete in October and is open to the public. That also connects to the senior center. Promote and monitor diverse housing that will accommodate a wide variety of life stages and needs. And there was an annual housing report that was shared first quarter of last year, January, and that will be produced again after the first of the year. You'll see an updated report that will be presented.
Any other questions on this slide?
Well, I personally would like, I'd like to adjust this one in, for next year, just, you know, I feel like we gotta streamline our either ADU process or something to make those more appealing to build on houses that it makes sense to build them on, right? But because you know, we all know we've got a lot of single family houses, right? I mean, I don't know about counting them as really that all I remember is we got a report a few months ago that there was only 3 ADUs built in the last year, and then there's only 12 total existing in all of Sherwood, which means.
Part of our challenge is, the vast majority of our homes are in homeowner associations that don't allow them. And there's nothing we can do about that, under state law or contract law.
So let me push on that a little bit. I mean, Woodhaven,
The
obviously.
largest homeowners in the state.
Right.
No ADU.
No, I know, but what about, you know, I mean, all that area, all the area I'm in, all the area that is,
I'm not saying all.
Oregon
but the vast
Street,
Majority of it is,
across.
yeah.
Besides Woodhaven, there's many other homeowner associations within Sherwood.
Okay.
It'd be interesting to know where they all were though.
We have.
it.
Yeah,
We have
I
it.
forget,
It shows
but yeah.
up.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just saying that it feels like there's some houses that I see and I go, oh yeah, that one easily could have, it's on a, you know, half-acre lot. Kind of, it's one of the old ones or whatever. And I'm like, I wonder why, you know, and then I tried to go through the process and I'm like, oh yeah, this is kind of onerous to try to get through this whole thing. And so I'm just wondering if it's a question of it being an easy button, making it easy for people versus just, you know, people don't know about it, or it's just not penciling out. Like, I just kind of want to get to the bottom of that, because I feel like we get these heavy-handed solutions from Salem, and we're not making like the things that could easily be done. We're not making those easier, and so we don't really have a great answer for, oh no, we're trying to do affordable housing. This is how the citizen, you know what I mean? This is how the citizens want to do it or whatever. And so I just want to figure out this. I don't know if it's on this goal.
We can talk about it in our vision for next year.
I just want to put a pin in it.
There's a lot of headwinds on that, especially in a community like ours, which a lot of the housing stock is newer. It has HOAs associated with it. Yeah, okay.
So as you're talking about, for next year, Jeff, the gentleman that was out here from SGR last year, we met with him today. They're gonna be reaching out to each one of you, hopefully early December. So we can start having those conversations leading up to the 11th. So just to give you a heads up,
Are we using Jeff again?
Jeff is coming,
He
SGR,
filled in last year because the other one.
we requested him, so. Yeah, so anyways.
Okay.
Anything else on this one?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay, invest in community enhancements and art. So, the roundabout art on Oregon Street is still coming. It's taking a bit longer, than I would have liked, and we hope to actually be able to pour the pads this month, weather dependent. It just became a little bit more. A few more steps in the process than the artists realized, so we're getting close.
This month as in November, or as in December.
Well, yeah, it was
This year?
hopefully this month, but yeah,
Hopefully in November, but if not, it'll be early
Yeah.
spring.
I mean, yeah, at this point, I'm like, it may be a springtime project. The grasses have all been cut down, so that part's ready to go now. Staff to develop programs, identifying and prioritizing different investments in civic art. And then the other thing that we really want to look at is what's the next art project after this? How do we want to build off of our public art plan? And the Cultural Arts Commission this is something they've been reviewing as well, is updating that master plan and trying to figure out which projects we can do moving forward. The goal is to do one a year. So this one's obviously taken a few more years than we had anticipated.
And can you remind those that might be listening how our public art's funded, so they're not thinking it's coming from our general fund?
So the public art is being funded out of the TLT dollars. And David could speak to exactly how that figures, but I believe there's about $160,000 in there for art.
And transient lodging tax is a tax on hotels and room stays. And under Oregon state law, there's very limited uses that we can use for those funds. Public art being one of them.
Invest in parks and public gathering spaces. One of the things that we're gonna be working on is the space in front of the art center, the gravel lot, that's going to fold into the Old Town strategic plan and identifying what a good use for that space may be. And then the other item here that we're actively working on is still continuing to look for land in the west. Moving on to public safety. continue police career cycle planning. And Lydia and Ty in the police department have done a great job at recruiting and retaining officers and looking for different ways, whether it's through LinkedIn or just different advertising means to get officers through the door and making sure that we offer a comparable benefit package. Collaborate with the school district on efforts that enhance the safety and security of Sherwood youth. And this is the Safe Route to School program. And I wanted to mention, I believe everyone knows this project has moved to phase 2 for review. And we're actually expected to know later this month if the project's going to move forward.
Yeah, this Thursday afternoon, there's a meeting to move it, if it moves forward to the traffic commission or not.
Well, if it moves forward in terms of award, if it doesn't get awarded, then we have to think about plan B.
So we need to, yeah, that's a whole nother conversation of how we actually move forward if we actually use some money out of our traffic, capital traffic, or street capital replacement fund to actually do the project.
Any other questions on public safety?
This one, I think, it's a work in progress. We actually probably need to have some more conversation about what we really want out of this. As we move forward. So-
We're finding it a hard way to identify success in this area and a difficult item to measure. And so we just want to make sure we have more conversations at goal setting this year
Yeah.
on what we're looking for, what are the outcomes, how are we going to measure it, and how are we going to measure success?
Has any conversation with other communities that are emphasizing this been done? Have staff reached out to any other communities?
You know, any other communities that are doing it?
I don't know if you have from a public safety standpoint, I'm going to try now.
As far as,
Mental health.
yeah, actually, I just got, and I'll bring it to a work session to start the HRT team and the effectiveness it's had just countywide and then South Cities. We got some pretty good data. I think we'll be interested.
Yeah, I think an easy low-hanging fruit is here are the resources in the county for, depression, for anxiety, whatever I don't know if we have numbers, if we can post that in the bathrooms, we can put it on the bulletin board. Right. Yeah, just if our goal is to utilize county resources, great. How do we, we've got a new website coming. Can we put that as one of the pages, right? I mean, again, we're not saying we're gonna do it. We're just saying, be aware, here are the things, right? So that's kind of what I see as a low hanging fruit on that.
We do that quite a bit on our social media. We'll every so often put
Yeah.
resources we reach out to. So yeah, we can connect.
And we do through the library as well.
Yeah, I'm just saying that,
Yeah.
that could be the goal, right? Hey, we're,
Yeah.
we publish these 4 things or once a quarter or whatever it is. We're trying to make everybody aware, here are the county resources for mental health.
And if we feel like we're doing all that, this may be a goal, a longer conversation, or it's not a goal anymore. I mean, if we're, yeah.
Well, and to add to that, so the Metro Mayors Consortium is step back. Metro has to reauthorize SHS, the Supporting Housing Services tax. And there's a big debate going on between Metro and the counties. The MMC has taken a position that there should be direct allocation to cities. Because each city's a little different, and there's things that we would do differently than maybe a countywide solution. So that there's potential that we may have funding to do something on our own. Some of these areas down the road. More to come, but also I'd love to do that.
Yeah, so I just think like the library, police, they're doing some stuff, but I mean, we were trying to think about who we get into with the count, how do we measure that? So just some additional conversation, maybe this next year in the goal setting, if it stays on here or not, so.
I went the wrong, there we go. Encourage pedestrian, bicycle, and driver safety and safety and improvements in school zones. This has been a big topic of conversation right now, and we've begun the review of Archer Glen School Zone. And then the Traffic Safety Committee and Council are planning a joint work session for December 17th. So we hope to have a lot more conversations and have conversations about formation of further forming that committee. Have also purchased 2 portable speed radar signs to be installed at Sunset and Timbrel, or at least are in the process of purchasing, which is saying yes.
Yep. Rich, do you know when those are gonna be?
Is that separate from the safe routes to school plan?
Yeah, it's separate. So the idea we've been talking about for a while is actually getting some of these speed radar signs that we can actually move around to. So it's not just using the PD trailer that the battery dies sometimes. These are portable. They ran off of solar that we can actually move around the city too. So not just here, it's just how we're funding it, buying, purchasing all the stuff within the budget. So, but I do know we've ordered 2. I just don't, Rich doesn't know either when they're gonna be here, so.
Enhance overall community safety. We have the police reserve program, currently have 4 reserves. They're utilized to assist and do ride-alongs with officers as needed, and then also help with special events in the community. And then use available data to assess community safety. Is being worked on for the end of the year, beginning of next year, that will be shared.
And that'll be the police data coming from the WAC, I believe, is when I talked to the chief about this, so have some data on that.
Pursue, evaluate, and position the city to maximize available revenue sources. This is moving on to our next pillar 5, which is fiscal responsibility. We have been awarded $1 million from Representative Salinas, and we're pursuing state homeland grant for cameras within parks and water sites. Awarded $45,000 for the evidence van, and recently received notice of intent to award for $9 million, and that's for a broadband deployment program grant application. Just this one.
So I would just say add to Kristen's note on the 45K for the evidence van. We're still gonna have to come up with some money for that. We're looking at being able to use some of the opioid money as well as some of the DEA money that is we did budget
Where
for.
did
So
the 45K come from?
Homeland Security grant through emergency management.
So we wrote it specifically for the evidence ban?
So our emergency management coordinator wrote that, working with the police department. So, yep.
Here we can park it out at the Robin Hood Festival and we can use tourism dollars to come up. This is the draw.
So
You can come check out our new evidence
there you
van.
go. So, but anyways, I just that's a small number, but it actually helps out. So
Something like, well, just food for thought, I'll make it quick. My understanding is Hillsborough no longer wants to be a lead agency for cooperative buying, because we would buy off their police contracts to save money. A lot of the agencies did. Ty was telling me they no longer want to do that. There's a lot of vehicles we could use to set up our own program in partnership with the other agencies around us, so we can continue to get those price breaks. And I think that's something, if Hillsborough's not going to do that anymore, I think that's something we need to look at.
Why do they not want to do it? Is it
Administrative overhead, is what I understand. But there's tools out there that will handle the overhead for you to get that done. Cooperative buying with governments is a huge industry in the US. So I think there's some ways we can solve for that.
yeah, we've used other agencies as well as we use the state too. And we purchase vehicles. So
And I talked to the league about it too. There might be a role for the league here.
good. Anything on this one, Kristen?
Invest in business process improvements to improve efficient service delivery to Sherwood residents. So one thing that we recently did is move to Paycom, which is a new payroll system. And so we've outsourced our payroll. We're in the process of implementing the 3% transaction fee for the use of credit cards. And then we're also undergoing an organizational assessment project, and we're expected to have more information back about that in 2025. That's just really looking at how we're doing business right now and finding ways for efficiencies and how we might better improve the way we're doing things. We're also engaged, of course, in the WCCLS funding and governance project. I have a meeting about that tomorrow. And we will be expecting to hear some recommendations starting in January from them. So, and currently they've just been gathering a lot of information and data, and I expect that I'll have a lot more recommendations and how they're proposing we move forward starting in January. Be transparent and proactive in the regular reporting of the city's financial condition. One way we said we were going to do this was with quarterly budget meetings. We did have to reschedule our October meeting due to lack of quorum, so that's rescheduled for December 5th. Okay, pillar number 6, the last one is citizen engagement, improve effective communication to modernize citywide interaction. The big thing we're working on here is the update to the website. The project is on track to be complete in June of 2025. Live testing expected to start in late March. The other item that we did want to just point out here is improve engagement and communication. This is something that we've been having a lot of conversations about, just how we're engaging the community, how we're getting our messaging out. I think in next year's budget, you're probably going to see a request for a communication specialist again. I know that we looked at that a few years ago and it was a higher level position, and we're reevaluating that, but we see that as a really important thing moving forward. So we'll see if there's the funds to support it this year.
Yeah, I just think with the website being updated, I know that there was conversation last year during the session on the branding part of this, and I think it's actually time to take it to the next level. But we have done a variety of looking at different options, but I want to also make sure that if we bring a position to you that we can fund it long term, and I'm not certain strictly how it was brought to you last time it was sustainable. So I believe this position would be doing some other stuff just outside of the general fund as well as broadband. It would be covering some of our utilities as well. So just, we haven't forgot about you. We haven't done a lot of new communication. I know the police department does a great job on social media. We continue to do stuff inside the city to get information out, but I know that there's a lot of areas we can improve on it. So
I think I should probably use them as an example a lot, but whoever is doing Tiger's communication does a bang up job. And so like their job description maybe is
Right.
helpful to glean some things
Is
from.
it still Kent? Wyatt that's doing that?
He's still there. I think they have several people.
Okay.
But yeah, he's still there.
One time he was a principal.
I gotta say, one of the things that's gonna make this key, and we gotta fix this into the website, I had a 90-plus-year-old veteran come up to me this weekend and say, hey, I got the newsletter from the city. I love it. It came after the Veterans Day celebration, and so I didn't know about that, and I would have loved to have gone to it. You know what I mean? And I was like, okay, I can see, like, this is, we've got to have multiple avenues of connection, and I know the website will allow for, hey, you can subscribe to these kinds of things and stuff like that, but that's just one of those things where I just, you got to throw yourself on the mercy and apologize and just say, hey, we'll find a better way to communicate. But, to tell a 90-year-old veteran, yeah, we had a great party. It was great. I hope you're here next year. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know what to say, but it's like, I dropped the ball there. I'm sorry you didn't know about it,
So there's room for improvement. I think, I think as we're looking at the organization assessment, I think this will be one area that's identified, because really you have different departments doing people that have their normal jobs too, or doing the actual communication on social media, and that will work, but you actually need somebody that's kind of oversees some of that stuff too as the communication person. And meeting up with folks every other month or so. So there's ways we'll be bringing stuff back to you on that, but there's room for improvement there. So it's not that we haven't forgot about it.
Promote a high level of customer-centric approach to citizen interaction with the city. One thing we've talked a lot about is the Citizen Academy. Sylvia and I are actually reviewing some documents of other citizen academies that have occurred. Someone from our Parks Board shared their materials from the city of Carlsbad, actually, program that they had gone through, and it's just fun to see how different cities approach that. So we're reviewing all of that information and hope to come back or provide some more information in the spring with a recommendation. Our goal would be to start in fall of 2025.
Yeah, last year was fall of 2024.
I
Just
know.
saying.
I know.
But I think, we had a great program and it was a great, we had a lot of great volunteers that ended up on our boards and commissions because of that program, so, yeah.
Yeah.
it's good.
And if it's something that we really wanted to do sooner and not switch it up too much, we could.
Yeah.
We could push it up. We could do a spring, but we started to think that. Feels like hitting the time right, do you do 6 weeks in a row, I believe is what we did before? And do you do that in the fall and try to get it done before the holidays, or do you do it in the spring and then the weather gets nice? So we're also trying to figure out what's doable for people. How often do they want to come? Should it be once a month? Should it be every other week? Should it be every week? But
I wouldn't do it in the spring because this is gonna be our first time doing a 2-year budget. It's gonna be a very different process, so.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay, and then the last item we wanted to touch on was engage youth in local government, and I believe everyone's aware we're trying to have more conversations about forming the youth advisory board or reforming that, and we actually hope to bring that back at a work session on December 17th. I believe that's it for our updates on our goals. As you can see, most of them are started.
Yeah.
And a few are complete.
I think staff has done a great job of using the template of, taking the council goals, making them city goals. Like I said, there's improvements in certain areas that we can do, but I think staff's done a great job of, priority was the council goals into the budget. There's a lot of work that's gone on in the last 6-8 months that's not even up here, but that it ties to these goals. More than happy to have those conversations with everybody on our one-on-ones of what else is going on in the city. But I think by budgeting and everything with these goals in mind when we did that, I think that's helped out this year some. So more than happy to answer any questions.
Do you have a working document that all staff puts their notes in? I mean, how onerous has this process been?
You want to?
Because this is one of the best updates that I've probably seen in years, so I just was wondering.
So right now, everyone emails in their updates and Tina's been helping put it all together. We actually had seen at ICMA a software that does this that I'm extremely excited about. That really breaks it down almost exactly like this and then shows a chart or a progress, which I think would be fantastic, and it actually has a report out tool, and you can even make it live and on the website, so anybody could look at any time to see where you are on a project, and anyone could go in and update it. So we're starting to look at different programs that might be useful and also help with communication and where we are with everything, and you could really look at any time.
It's nice.
So,
But
we're not there yet. Right
what
now,
you
it's
have
like.
had is definitely very good and very detailed, and I appreciate that.
I wanted to just honor something that I just heard you say, whether it was intentional or not, about it not being simply council goals, but being a city goal.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think that's something that's been important.
Yeah, no, I think it starts with council, in the retreat, and then it's our job as staff to be able to provide those services. And, eventually it would be nice everything's, our budget wise is based off of the city goals, right? As well as the day-to-day stuff that we're doing. So that's where we're kind of heading. We tried that this
In
year.
case anybody misunderstands that, the retreat happens in that room. It's not a cabin somewhere.
Please, yeah, yeah.
Did I say retreat?
Council goal setting.
Goal setting,
Yeah.
not a retreat.
I was gonna say, and it's on a Saturday, by the way.
Yeah, no, it's not a retreat.
Yeah, it's 4 hours.
Really, that's how it should work.
Yeah.
is we should have our council goal setting and you guys identify the goals. We provide information, what we can and can't do, and then we base our budget off of those as well as our day-to-day stuff. So long-term, we'll get there. So. Any other questions? So are you getting enough information from us on the weekly reports plus this? You feel like you're kind of engaged in
You just. Almost there.
almost? Okay.
You've done a great job.
So, good. Staff's done a great job on this, so,
You're rocking it. You're rocking it.
excellent.
Thank our planning commissioner chair for coming.
So,
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
awesome.
We're gonna follow up on
You
December
want to get out of
3rd.
here?
Oh, you can stay there.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, is she here for the next part? I think she's here for the next.
You're just curious or you're?
So we invited all the chairs tonight
Yeah,
to come and listen.
Oh, to come and listen.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And I have my notes for.
sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Should we get those in advance? You know, that's a lot.
We're gonna have a meeting with all the chairs here Thursday.
I know, she has her notes for it. Did you see that already? You better add in next one.
It's not that we're traveling, so.
All right, next up is recreational immunity. Sebastian.
This presentation was inspired in part by a presentation CIS put on for the City Attorneys Association conference. And in that conference presentation, CIS was encouraging cities that are covered through CIS to opt in to a statute concerning immunity protection for the city.
Could you give everyone just a little background in case they don't know why
Yeah.
this has become an issue, just real quick?
Because cities open up their trails, the people who are using the trails can be injured and can sue the city. The legislature has two statutes, and I'm going to cover both of them very briefly. They're different in scope. And one applies to all cities, and one a city must opt in. So,
And I apologize, just so everybody knows, there was a lawsuit where someone claimed that
Yeah.
they weren't using the trail for recreation, they were using it to go to work, and they won that lawsuit. And it got damages, so, and that's, yeah, I just wanna make sure that's why this whole thing started with the state.
So the two statutes at issue, 105-682 for recreational immunity, it concentrates on activities for recreational purpose. And as Mayor Rosner was indicating, the question presented in a court of appeals is walking your dog on a boardwalk recreational purpose? The court said might be, but it might be transportation. And because of that, we look to ORS 105-668, and it doesn't look at the purpose of the activity. It just asks, is the trail open to the public, and also requires opting in. And it's the second one that I'll be presenting to council first and second council sessions in December, an ordinance recommending that the city opts in.
We just have a sign that says our trails can only be used for recreational purposes.
We do, isn't that right?
I don't know that we have a sign that says it can only be used. I mean,
The legislature's working on permanent
Yeah.
fix for this too, this session.
That's
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
So, and the case we were talking about was Fields versus City of Newport. Essentially, it was this person walking on a boardwalk, got injured and said the city was not immune from this lawsuit. They said because the plaintiff was about to recreate, but was actually engaged in transportation. Legislature, in response to this Court of Appeals opinion, had some temporary fixes, and those temporary fixes are expected to sunset in 2025. But going back to 105-668, which is the subject of a future ordinance I'll be proposing. This applies to cities with a population of 500,000 residents or more. And those cities who choose to opt in either by a resolution or an ordinance. It applies to negligence claims for the use of trails or structures along trails, but it doesn't include streets. Unlike the previous statute 682, 668 also covers employees and city officials. And then it additionally encourages landowners to open their trails to the public because it provides some protection for those landowners who choose to do so. And of course, the most important is that our insurance provider is recommending that we and all cities that are covered to opt into this.
I'm sure that, somewhere the definition of trail is defined. If like our trails are paved, is that a trail or is that a street?
It's the difference between improved and unimproved trails.
Okay.
And because we're talking about two different statutes that approach coverage in two different ways. The first statute would apply to improved trails and the second one is only unimproved trails, but also includes structures.
Okay.
And that's my presentation. I'll have an ordinance presentation the first and second meeting in December and for your consideration. Do you have any questions?
There's no downside for opting in.
There's no downside, there's no cost. It's a simple ordinance. There's no reason we wouldn't.
Okay, all right. Hey, all right. I know we're about to adjourn here. I did hear that Jean said that she had some comments for goals. That's.
For our next meeting,
That's
December
our
3rd,
meeting.
with the boards and
We're
commissions.
gonna have all the heads of.
Okay, I just didn't want her to not be able to present or talk about it. Okay.
All right, we are adjourned. We will start our regular meeting at 7 o'clock.
Gotcha. Oh, no, my.